Hi, my name's Emily. I'm 33. If you're hearing this, it means I finally found the courage to share my story. No shame, no fear, no excuses, just the truth. I'm a widow, a mother, and a woman who lived through hell, hidden behind closed doors. When my husband, Matthew, died in a car crash, I was left with our 5-year-old son and his mother, the woman everyone called an angel. She read scripture, baked for neighbors, spoke of love. But behind the mask, she worked quietly to erase me as a mother, so she could take my son. That night I was in the shower. 10 minutes earlier, I had texted Matthew to grab milk. He never answered. At 2:13 a.m., the bell rang. I opened the door in a robe, hair dripping, and found 2 police officers. The woman held a hat. The man handed me a folded notice. I knew before they said a word. The next days blurred together. The funeral. Condolences. People repeating God's will, and a plan from above. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't look at my son without drowning in guilt. I hadn't saved his father. I couldn't save him. Our savings disappeared fast. On maternity leave with bills mounting, I lost our apartment. That's when Judith, my mother-in-law, appeared. A devout widow admired at church. She started a charity in Matthew's name, gave speeches about faith and family. To everyone else, she was grace itself. She reached out, offered her home, promised that Ethan and I were her family now, that God wanted us together. And I believed her. The first few days almost felt calm. Judith carried Ethan around, cooked meals, and prayed with him before bed. With her steady voice and regal composure, she played the grieving saint flawlessly. She even told me she saw herself in me, that for Ethan's sake we needed each other. And then the cracks showed. You still didn't clean the kitchen. That blouse shows too much, you're a widow. Ethan cried last night. Must mean he doesn't feel safe with you. This isn't the kind of life my son would have wanted. The mask slipped. She shut off the Wi-Fi at night, saying it was so I'd spend more time with God. She made me change my clothes in front of her friends, claiming I wasn't worthy of Matthew's memory. She whispered to Ethan that his dad would be disappointed if he saw how I acted. Soon she began locking the door whenever she played with him, leaving me outside. I told myself it was grief, her way of dealing with loss. But when we were alone, she was different. Cold, calculated, cruel. She pushed on every bruise she could find, until my silence was the only shield I had left. I kept quiet when she declared she'd manage my budget for my own good. When she hid my things. When she tossed out my letters. When she left notes saying I yelled at Ethan, even though it was just me begging him to finish his broccoli. Then came the wine bottles. I didn't drink, I couldn't, not while mourning, not while raising a child. But one day they appeared in my room. She photographed them. A week later I saw her post online. Faith is tested when someone close battles addiction. My friends stopped reaching out. People at church looked away. And the worst part, Ethan began to distance himself. Grandma says you might have to go to the hospital, he whispered once. My own son was afraid of me. On the 4th morning at Judith's, I woke up to the smell of cinnamon. At first it seemed nice, the scent of fresh muffins, sunlight pouring through stained glass. But the silence felt staged, like a set for the perfect home, where I was just an extra. I walked into the kitchen in my robe. Judith stood at the oven, hair styled, makeup perfect, drizzling honey glaze as though she were putting on a show. You're awake, she said gently, handing me coffee. Ethan's still asleep. He needs rest. He's very shaken over losing his father. He needs stability. It was one of those moments when you know every word is bait, even if you don't see the trap yet. I've made a decision, she went on. You and I are going to follow a schedule. She slid a sheet of paper across the table. Boxes neatly drawn, chores listed, even a spot for my signature. This isn't control, she smiled, lifting her hand like she was on stage. It's just a way to avoid chaos. And chaos is the worst thing for a child who lost his father. I looked her straight in the eye. No pity. No sorrow. Just cold determination. She had already chosen the path for both of us. All right, I whispered. I needed time. I was cornered but not yet broken. The next days became tests disguised as kindness. That's too tight. Widows don't wear jeans. If you can't wake up at 6, how can you be a good mother? She made me scrub the kitchen until it gleamed, then wash the dishes again right in front of me. I'm not blaming you, she said sweetly. You were never shown how to be a proper housewife. I said nothing. Ethan was both my anchor and my deepest pain. At just 5 years old, he started asking his grandmother if he was allowed to hug me. The boy who once drifted to sleep on my chest now pulled away from my hands. Grandma says I should pray for you, he whispered one night. Because when mommy gets sad, it can be dangerous. I didn't cry. Not in front of him. Not then. That evening I dug out an old flash drive. For the first time I typed into Google, how do you record conversations without breaking the law? Some things creep up on you slowly, like water warming until you realize you're already boiling. First came my phone. It didn't exactly vanish, it just broke. Judith showed up holding her old smartphone. I noticed your phone keeps shutting off. I have a spare. It's already set up. Set up. Messenger apps ready. Wi-Fi locked with her password, GPS active. She handed me the glossy device with the smile of someone who knows you won't refuse. And I foolishly said, thanks. Next, my bank card stopped working. Judith explained it kindly like she was helping me. You don't have a job right now. I opened a joint account and moved everything there. It's safer this way. You don't have to worry about bills anymore. God looks after the obedient. The new card carried her name. Mine was only listed as authorized user. I knew instantly who held the control. I became a prisoner in a golden cage. Pillows stitched with Bible verses, carpets soft enough to cover the traps. Even my diary, the one place I still wrote for myself, vanished. Emily, Judith sighed when I asked about it. You must have misplaced it. That's the second time this week. I'm a little concerned about you. She paused, deliberate. Maybe you should see someone. A professional. I know a wonderful Christian therapist. She helped me after losing my son. Just one consultation. For your safety. And Ethan's safety. That word safety landed like a verdict. One evening I walked into the kitchen and found Judith with Ethan. She held his small hands, whispering to him. He nodded without a word. When I stepped in, he glanced at me, then looked away. We were just talking about how important honesty is, Judith said, smiling. The truth sets you free. My chest tightened, but I kept my mouth shut. Not yet. That night, I turned the unfamiliar phone against her. I recorded everything. Files hidden under names like cookie recipe and kindergarten schedule. Every remark about my instability. Every mention of depression, or not thinking clearly. At the time, I didn't realize those scraps would turn into my shield. Back then, I was just trying to make it through the day. After another session with her therapist, Judith made an announcement. I've decided Ethan should sleep in my room a few nights a week. He gets scared when you talk in your sleep. The cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. It was the first sound to break the heavy silence we lived in. He's my son, I said. She smiled, slow, cold. No, Emily. He's my son's son. Have you ever been in a room so spotless it almost feels dangerous? Judith had an obsession with scents. Lavender in the bathroom. Vanilla in the living room. Cinnamon in the kitchen. Every corner of the house had to smell warm and safe. But to me, each fragrance turned into a rule. A command. A warning. After the cup incident, what she called my emotional outburst, a new stage began. The phone she had given me no longer worked on the mobile network. I could only connect through Wi-Fi and only with her password. I couldn't dial out, only receive the calls she approved. Oh, your friend Sophie rang, she said once. But I figured you wouldn't want to talk right then. You were in the shower. I hadn't been in the shower. I was standing right there. When I tried to text Sophie from my tablet, she never answered. Neither did several others. Before long, I realized I'd been removed from 2 group chats. Judith had already spread her story. Emily's going through a hard time. We're all praying for her mental health. She needs peace. Peace was her code word for silence. One of my old college friends, Hannah, tried reaching me directly. She left a voicemail, but it disappeared before I could play it. All that was left was the shadow of a notification. Did you delete my message? I asked Judith. She tilted her head, smiling. Sweetheart, you probably erased it yourself. These things happen when you're out of balance. That phrase, out of balance, cut like a blade. The following week, I tried to hold on to hope. I emailed my old publishing job, asking if they had any part-time remote work. 2 days later, their reply came, polite but cold. We appreciate your interest, but we cannot offer you work at this time. We wish you a quick recovery. Recovery? I had never once said I was sick. Later, while grabbing a towel from Judith's room, I noticed her laptop left open. My name was in the subject line of an email draft. Recommendation, Emily T. Personal. Reading it froze me. She had written about postpartum depression, trouble coping after her husband's death, and a tendency to isolate. She was sending it to my former employer, branding me as unstable. I didn't have time to copy it. She walked in. I acted like I was rummaging through the closet. Everything all right? She asked sweetly. You look worn out. That night I didn't eat. I just sat in silence. Before bed, Ethan gave me a hug. But it wasn't the tight, trusting hug I knew. It was hesitant, almost careful. Grandma says you're just sad because Dad's in heaven. But you'll get cured soon. Cured. The word itself felt like a threat. I forced a smile. Mommy can get better too, just in her own way. He nodded, then ran straight to Judith's room. She didn't ask anymore. She simply claimed him. That night, I backed up all my recordings onto a flash drive. I hid it inside Ethan's pillow. And for the first time in months I managed to sleep. Not because I felt safe, but because I was bracing myself for battle. The next morning I woke to silence. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that builds before a storm. Ethan wasn't in his room. By then that was almost routine. But this time the house itself was empty. No jackets on the hooks. No keys in the hallway. I grabbed Judith's phone and saw a single message. Ethan and I are at the therapist. We decided to make this a regular thing. Don't worry, you said yourself he needed more help. I had never agreed to that. And the worst part, I had no idea who she was taking him to. I slid down the wall, knees pulled tight against my chest. One thought circled in my head. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was just a guest in someone else's life. I was being erased. A few days later, Judith showed me one of Ethan's drawings. He drew a family, she said lightly. Here's him, me, and his dad. Where am I? Maybe he forgot. Or maybe it's his subconscious. Children sense more than we think. I didn't answer. I just kept staring at the drawing. It was clumsy, done in pencil like any child sketch. But where I should have been, there was only a son. Not a mother. Not even a person. Just a background decoration. That same week, Judith brought a guest into the house. A middle-aged woman with a rehearsed smile. This is Angela, she said brightly. She's a child psychotherapist. She's here to see how we're doing in our little world. Our world. Angela flashed a badge that looked official, though she moved it past me too fast to read. Then she began her questions, voice smooth, professional. Do you feel safe? Depends on the weather. Do you cry in front of your son? I met her eyes, and for the first time I dropped the mask. I cry when strangers enter my home without permission and act like I'm under investigation. Angela went quiet. Judith's lips curled into a smile. She's been a little emotional lately. That night I found a flash drive in the kitchen drawer. It was empty. Maybe left there on purpose. I copied all my recordings onto it, then hid it inside Ethan's teddy bear. I cut the seam, slipped it in, and stitched it closed. I wasn't living anymore. I was surviving, clinging to one thing only, my story. Because if history is still yours, it holds power. 2 weeks later, the warning came. On an old social media account I'd nearly forgotten, a message appeared. Your mother-in-law is already preparing a lawsuit. She says you're unstable and wants custody of your son. Think about how you'll prove otherwise. It was signed, Friend. In that moment I understood one thing. She was getting ready to strike. And I had no time left to hesitate. The next morning I woke with a plan. The fear was still there, but now it fueled me. I started by changing my iCloud password. Then I dug out Matthew's old tablet and revived my forgotten account. Inside were our old messages, family photos, videos of Ethan, pieces of my life Judith hadn't managed to erase. At last, something that was mine. I backed up my recordings again. scattering them in the cloud under harmless names. I even started a new diary, handwritten, in tiny script inside a cookbook. Between the recipes lay the real story. Humiliation, lies, the slow destruction of me as a mother. That week, Judith turned sweeter than ever. Cookies, coffee, staged hugs for Ethan, it was all theater. I knew it was the calm before the storm. She also changed how she spoke to him. See, darling? Grandma is always here for you. Mom is often tired. It's not her fault, she's just weak right now. But you can always rely on Grandma. And he listened. Because children don't analyze, they absorb. He started pulling away from me. Not because he stopped loving me, but because she was teaching him that love meant something else. On Thursday, she placed a folder on the kitchen table. It's just a formality, she said, drying her hands. An application for temporary extension of my guardianship rights. I already pick him up from school, take him to the doctor, buy his clothes. Just for convenience. Sign here. Inside were official documents. Real forms, stamped with the lawyer's letterhead. Blank spaces waiting for my signature. I didn't pick up the pen. Why now? I asked. Because I'm thinking about the child. You live in your own reality. You haven't gone back to work. You're unstable. Remember when you yelled at me in March? You threw things in my room. I shot back. She shrugged. We all lose control sometimes. But some people regret it. Others record voices, hide flash drives and toys. Did you really think I didn't notice? My stomach turned. She knew. At least part of it. That night I couldn't sleep. Ethan was with her, and I sat in my room gripping a pair of scissors. Not as a weapon, just to feel like I still had some kind of power. By morning I had made up my mind. I needed a lawyer, whatever it took. I reached out to Hannah, my old colleague. The one link Judith hadn't managed to cut. We agreed to meet at a park, pretending it was just a coincidence. The next day, I told Judith I was going grocery shopping. Wonderful, she said with a smile. Be back by 4. Angela and I have guests coming. She wants to speak with Ethan again. Questions about your approach to discipline. It was code. She was lining up her story. A therapist, witnesses, her version of evidence. When I finally saw Hannah, I looked like a ghost. But I brought everything with me, the flash drive, printed notes, photos of the planted wine bottles, and Ethan's drawing, the one where I didn't exist. Hannah listened quietly. At last she said, I know who can look at this. But you need a lawyer. And you need to get out of that house, Emily. Otherwise you'll lose your son. I didn't answer right away. Because deep down I already knew I had lost nearly everything. But not him. Not yet. I used to hate thin walls. Back in our old house with Matthew, he could hear every call I made from the kitchen. But in Judith's home, those walls turned into my ally. One night, lying in bed, I caught their voices through the plaster. Ethan's voice, soft and unsure. But why can't I stay with Mom? Because she's still unwell, sweetheart. She doesn't always think clearly. We don't want anything bad to happen to her, do we? Judith whispered. But she's nice. She reads to me when you're gone. She gets tired. Remember how she yelled when you wouldn't finish your porridge? Or when she forgot to pick you up from school? None of it was true. My head pounded. She was planting false memories, rewriting the world where I was the monster, and she was the savior. The next day I finally broke my silence. Judith, I don't want Angela speaking to Ethan without me anymore. He's my child. I have the right to be present in any conversation about his mental health. She set her cup down slowly, staring at me like I carried a disease. Emily, you're disturbing our spiritual harmony. I do everything for you. For him. Why are you so ungrateful? Because I'm not an object. I'm his mother. And I remember when he called me mommy and didn't need permission to hug me. For the first time there was real silence between us, not filled with coffee chatter or Bible verses. Silence that told her. I was awake now. 2 days later, Hannah came back with a lawyer, Laura Bennett. Short, tough, eyes sharp like steel. We met in a small cafe Judith hated for its cheap milk foam. Laura went through everything, the recordings, the notes, the photos. She listened to Judith's words caught on tape. You can't leave without permission. Your emotions are hurting Ethan. We are reconsidering your right to be a mother. When she finished, she leaned back. On the surface, it all looks like care. She's careful with her cover. We need to move quickly. She's either filed already or will within days. What do? I asked. Hold steady. Keep writing. Document everything. When she makes her move, we'll strike harder. I went home with new determination. And the moment I walked in, I knew Judith sensed it. Her voice was ice at the door. I know you saw a lawyer. That changes everything. I've contacted social services. They'll be here next week to assess your fitness as a mother. She expected me to crumble. Instead, I smiled. Perfect. I was just preparing materials for them. For once, she had nothing to say. That night, Ethan whispered to me in the dark. Mom, are you going away for treatment soon? Grandma says you are. But I don't want you to go. I held him close. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. But maybe soon we'll leave together. Would you like that? He nodded, serious. And for the first time in months, he whispered, Only with you, Mom. Monday, the day child welfare showed up. The house looked like a stage set. New curtains, fresh cookies, Bible verses taped to the fridge like props. Judith drifted from room to room talking about hospitality in the spirit of Corinth, while I stood there watching her turn our life into a showroom of lies. The social worker, Miss Collins, had the kind of politeness nurses use in psych wards. She sat across from me with her form and asked, voice flat, Have you felt emotionally drained for a long time? How long have you been out of work? Have you ever lost track of time or control? Judith sat beside me, smiling like a saint in a painting. She sometimes mixes up the days, she added sweetly. But that's normal after such a loss. I'm here to help. And Ethan is so close to me, aren't you, darling? Ethan didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. When Miss Collins asked to see his room, Judith hurried to lead her away, leaving me in the kitchen. That's when I saw it lying on the table. My old diary, open to the page where I had written about panic attacks after the funeral. But now it was marked up. Yellow highlights, notes scribbled in the margins, examples of instability. My own words twisted into weapons. I slammed it shut just as footsteps came back. I'm sorry, Judith whispered after the worker left. I had to. You leave me no choice. I can't let my grandson grow up with someone who won't accept help. This isn't help, I said. It's control. No. It's love. Just not the kind you're used to. The next day, I learned the first custody hearing had already been set. Judith's claims that I was emotionally unstable, that I showed signs of alcoholism, that I neglected my child. The evidence in the file, photos of wine bottles in my room, a neighbor's testimony claiming they heard night screams and saw strange visitors, a report from Angela, the so-called neutral child therapist, describing my detachment and unpredictable behavior. Bit by bit, she had stitched together a distorted version of me, a monster in her story. When I told Laura, she didn't look surprised. She's been laying this trap for years. People like her always have backup plans. But now we fight back. Laura brought in a private investigator. Within 2 days he found them. Tiny cameras hidden in Ethan's room, with microphones that picked up sound. This isn't just manipulation, he said. This is surveillance. That's our key. That night I finally broke. For the first time, I didn't cry quietly into a pillow or behind a locked door. I stood in my room and sobbed loud, shaking, gasping. Not in shame this time, but in release. Because it wasn't only my private war anymore. Now it was real. And when Ethan slipped in, sat beside me and whispered, I heard you crying. You won't leave me, will you? I couldn't answer with words. I just held him tight like before. Like always. For the first time in months, my voice wasn't gone. I had pictured court as something dramatic, shouting, tears, truth cutting through. But in reality, it was just a cold room with plastic chairs, the stale hum of air conditioning, and piles of paper that decided people's lives. I wasn't called a mother. I was labeled the defendant. The judge, a stern woman whose glasses hid half her face, flipped through files like she was reading an instruction manual. Judith sat next to her lawyer, a smooth, polished man holding a folder stamped in bold, "Oh, Carter, unstable mother." My name, surrounded by psychiatric terms and lies. They started with Angela, the so-called psychologist. She painted me as emotionally distant, avoiding responsibilities, unable to give my son stability. Her son feels safer with his grandmother, she said, flat as stone. I wanted to scream, but Laura squeezed my hand. Then the neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, took the stand. I've heard her screaming many nights. And I've seen strange men going in and out of the house. Very suspicious. The men were a plumber and a delivery driver. I remembered the exact days. I even had the receipts. Finally Judith stood. Her voice shook in just the right spots. Bible verses dropped between sobs. I lost my son. My grandson is all I have left. Emily, she tries, but her instability is dangerous. I say this not out of malice, but out of love. I wanted to tear the mask from her face. But Laura moved first. Your Honor, she said, setting a flash drive on the table, we have evidence. Recordings. Photos. A licensed investigator's report. Her voice was steady as she listed it out. Proof the wine bottles were planted. Proof the neighbor described incidents when Emily wasn't even home. Proof from an independent psychologist that Emily's mental state was sound. And messages showing Judith telling Emily's friends she was sick. Weeks before she filed her claim. The bailiff collected the flash drive. The judge ordered it logged and reviewed. Laura also submitted the investigator's notarized report. For the first time, the judge actually looked up. Then we all sat in silence as a recording played. Judith's whisper to my son, "Your mom is tired. Soon you'll live with me, and everything will be better." The courtroom went still. When the judge finally spoke, her voice had changed. I am issuing a temporary restraining order preventing Judith from contact with the child. Custody remains with the mother until further proceedings. Her words rang like a bell. I walked out holding Ethan's hand. He didn't say a word. He just gripped me tightly as if I might disappear. On the courthouse steps, Judith stood like stone. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'll get him back. I'll find a way." I didn't answer, because for the first time I wasn't afraid of her anymore. Ethan and I left. A new city, a new home, a new school. And for the first time in years, silence that didn't terrify me. The move was quiet. No announcements. No goodbyes. No posts online. I just took Ethan, the flash drives with evidence, a few essentials, and we left. Hannah, my old colleague, turned out to be more than just a friend. She found us a small rental 100 miles away. A calm neighborhood. A school just 2 stops down. No familiar faces. No one asking questions. No trace of Judith. I didn't bring a single thing from that house. Not a thread. I even bought secondhand clothes just to feel free of her control. Ethan started first grade. He wasn't afraid of school itself. He was afraid I might leave. "You won't disappear, Mom?" he whispered on that first day, holding my hand like it might slip away. "Never," I told him. And for once I truly meant it. He carried a bright new backpack with his name tag. The new kid. But this time he wasn't scared because I was there. I picked up part-time work at the local library. It wasn't much, but it was steady. Paper books, quiet. It gave me back a sense of control. Hannah, with her courthouse ties, pushed me to secure a final ruling. No more temporary orders. No more loopholes Judith could exploit. The hearing was set a month later. Different district. Different judge. No audience. Just me, Laura, and Judith, appearing stiffly by video with a new lawyer at her side. This judge was thorough. He went through not just custody records, but also the results of Judith's psychiatric evaluation. The report described obsessive rescue syndrome and concluded she was a risk to Ethan's emotional well-being. The judge asked 3 questions. Was surveillance of the child done without the mother's consent? Yes. Was evidence falsified and confidentiality breached? Yes. Are there sufficient grounds to permanently restrict Judith's custody rights? Absolutely. Judith tried again, crying, pleading, her voice shaking. She stole my grandson. I only ever wanted the best for him. But this time her words fell flat. "Miss Judith," the judge said evenly, "your actions show calculated manipulation and emotional harm. Custody is granted solely to Emily Carter. A permanent restraining order is issued." I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just walked out of the courthouse, breathed deep, and for the first time in 2 years didn't glance over my shoulder. It wasn't victory. It was freedom. Ethan and I began to live like a real family. He cleaned out his backpack. He drew pictures with me in them. Eyes, arms, warmth. His teacher told me he was bright, open, hopeful. I quietly thanked God, not for miracles but for getting us out in time. Evenings filled with simple dinners. No silence. No fear. No hidden devices. Just us. For 3 months peace returned. And then came the day. School. Last class. I was 2 minutes late. Ethan wasn't with the kids leaving the room. He wasn't in the hallway. He wasn't anywhere in the building. He was gone. I ran around the school 3 times screaming his name. I stopped teachers, kids, even the security guard, but everyone just shrugged. He left a little early, the guard finally said. With a relative. A woman. She had a note, said his mom asked her to pick him up. My vision went dark. I don't remember dialing 911, only hearing my own voice breaking. I have a court order. No one is allowed near him. No one. Especially her. The police showed up in 12 minutes. The longest 12 minutes of my life. They pulled the security footage. A black sedan with tinted windows. On the screen, Ethan climbing inside. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat, her face hidden. He didn't resist. He hugged her. He thought it was a game, I whispered. She tricked him. She kidnapped my son. The search began. Police questioned taxi drivers, checked rental listings, followed traffic cameras. I called everyone, Hannah, Laura, even Judith's old priest. Nothing. For endless hours later, they found him. An apartment on the edge of a nearby town, rented under a false name. When officers broke in, Judith sat on the couch, calmly reading The Little Prince aloud. She didn't fight. She only looked up and said, almost proudly, I saved him. He belongs with me. I am his home. Ethan wasn't hurt, but he shook all over. At the station, he didn't speak. He just clung to his teddy bear like it was the only solid thing left. I stayed with him through the night, kissing his hands, whispering, I'm here. I'll never let anyone take you again. The next day, Judith was sent for psychiatric evaluation. The doctor's verdict was clear. Psychologically unstable, with signs of obsessive rescue syndrome. She believes her mission is to save her grandson, even if it means breaking the law, one psychiatrist explained. She doesn't see boundaries. She's dangerous. The court's decision came fast. Involuntary hospitalization. A closed facility. No right to leave. No contact. Days later, I sat on a bench outside Ethan's school, watching him play. Now I walked him to and from class myself. We bought him a tracker watch. He never left my sight. He started drawing again. The last picture he brought me showed 2 figures, me and him. And above us, a sun. This time not instead of me but shining over us. The silence around us was real now. And it was ours. When you faced real fear. The kind that freezes your blood and steals your voice. Something inside you changes. I didn't come out braver. I came out sharper. More cautious. Stronger than I ever believed I could be. We stayed in that town. No more running. For Ethan, stability meant everything. The same school, the same walls, the same mom. Nothing disappearing. We built new traditions. Pancakes every Saturday. Walks to the lake on Sunday mornings. Sometimes we barely spoke because peace didn't need words. One evening, as he pushed peas around his plate, he asked quietly, Mom, is Grandma nice now? The question cut, but it didn't surprise me. She was sick, Ethan. And not everything people call love is good. But none of it was your fault. Will she come back? I pulled him close. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to be direct. No. She can't take you anymore. You're safe. Promise. His eyes, so much like Matthew's, looked calmer than I'd seen in years. Weeks later, an envelope arrived. Official. From the clinic. Inside was a note from her doctors. Condition stable but memory impaired. Patient believes she still lives with her grandson. No visitation allowed. Isolation maintained for her safety and others. I felt no anger. Just a quiet sadness. Not for her, but for the illusion that we ever could have been a family. I began writing. Not as therapy but as a record. Every note, every detail. In another name, in another form, but always true. One day, A letter reached me from another woman. I also lived with the perfect mother-in-law. Thank you for writing. Now I know I'm not crazy. That's when I realized my story wasn't rare. My fight mattered. Not just for me but for anyone who had been silenced. Ethan laughed more now. He skipped on the way to school, chattered about camping trips, dogs, books he wanted to read. He was a child again. And I was his mother again. Fully. Without conditions. Yes, I still jump when there's an unexpected knock, or when an unknown number flashes on my phone. But I don't fear breaking anymore. Because I've learned this. There's always a way out of the deepest water. Especially when you're holding the hand of the one you learned to swim for. 6 months had passed since the night I found Ethan in that cold apartment, wrapped in a blanket. Read to like he was part of a story that wasn't hers to tell. Half a year of silence. Real silence. Not poisoned. Not frightening. Silence that let us breathe. We didn't talk about grandma anymore. We didn't talk about court. We just lived one day at a time. And then another envelope came. Official. Marked with the clinic seal. Inside, a short note from her psychiatrist. Ms. M.'s condition is stable. She has been granted the right to send a letter to her grandson. Any contact is subject to approval of his legal guardian. The choice was mine. I sat with the envelope in my hands for hours. Should I throw it away? Keep it? Read it? Give it to Ethan? That night I walked into his room. Ethan, I said carefully, your grandmother wrote you a letter. He froze. Do you want to read it? He thought for a long moment, then shook his head. You can read it if it's good. But if it says I should be with her again, don't bother. The next morning I opened it alone. Her handwriting was flawless. Precise. As always. Ethan, I know you probably hate me. Maybe you should. But I remember how you laughed when I read The Boy and the Fox. I remember your favorite cereal. And how you called me your Mimi. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only want you to know that I thought I was saving you. But really, I was saving myself. If you ever want to write, do. If not, I'll understand. I read it once. Then again. And I knew, this wasn't a letter for a child. It was a confession. Maybe the first honest thing she'd ever given me. I didn't hand it to Ethan. I wouldn't load him with her ghosts. Instead, I sealed it in a box and wrote across the top. Never give to a child without their consent. Because no one will ever make choices for him again. Or for me. Later that week we went to the lake, our place. Ethan skipped stones, his face calm in the evening light. Mom, are we staying here long? Forever is long enough, I said. Can we just do nothing today? We can. And that's the best plan ever. He smiled Matthew's smile. Alive. Real. We survived. And now we live.